Stop second-guessing your dice rolls. Today's question is brought to us by Psychopathic, a subscriber and player in one of my games, who asks, when should you call for a check, and what are the reasons behind doing so? In the interest of dice puns, we're going to roll those two questions together today and talk a little bit about essentially how to smooth out the process of deciding when to reach for the dice. I've got 4 ideas that came to me during a little bit of a brainstorm, and hopefully they will provide some help. Key number 1 to knowing when to use the dice is to be resolving uncertainty. In order for rolling the dice to be the resolution to some kind of uncertainty, there has to exist some kind of uncertainty. For some reason, this seems revelatory when I talk to people about it, the idea that you shouldn't call for a check because somebody wants to do something if they have no chance of success or no chance of failure. We've all probably seen a meme or two of somebody who rolled a natural 1 when trying to tie their shoe and fell out of a window and died a horrible death. But essentially, we shouldn't be requiring our players to roll the dice for something that they shouldn't have a real chance of failing at. Similarly, when there are things that players ask to be able to do, if there's no chance that they can succeed at it, we should tell the players that there's no chance for them to succeed at it, or in other words, we shouldn't be reaching for the dice. The first question on whether or not to roll dice is it possible? Can we possibly succeed? Can we possibly fail? And then if it falls in between those two possibilities, we are in a place where the dice can be useful. At that same point, we also need to know, is there a meaningful consequence to success or failure? Because again, if there's not, then we might not have hit the bar of when we need to call for a check. It's important that success or failure has some sort of consequence. Otherwise, there's really not a lot of point in resolving the outcome with your 20-sided dice. It's important when we are resolving these things that the players are armed with sufficient information to make an in-character decision that is suitable. So most of the time, I like players to upfront be able to know whether or not something is possible or impossible, or roughly what their character's chances are, if it's something that their character should be able to discern. I have a video on the topic of showing the DCs and armor classes. Check that one out if you want to dive deeper into that specific aspect. Key number 2 of when you should be checking with your dice and rolling in that manner is about conflict resolution. If there is an opportunity for conflict, whether it be in combat, in a social situation, or even conflict against the world in exploration, that's the kind of thing that the dice are there to decide. Anything that the skills of the character could influence is when it's important to check into these things. If a survival check is needed in order to make a successful passage through the woods, then the skills of the character take part in resolving that conflict between the inevitable difficulty of navigating in nature versus the skill of the character and the desire to reach the goal that they are aiming for. So conflict resolution is a key that you're ready to reach for the dice. If there's a conflict you need to resolve, the dice are there. A third time is perhaps one of the few occasions where you might break key number 1 is with key number 3, which is about the demonstration of skills. If you're trying to give a character a chance to show off their talent and to showcase and be spotlighted in being particularly awesome at the thing that they are particularly awesome at, then sometimes calling for a dice roll to measure how awesome they were in that moment can overrule the need for whether or not somebody could succeed. If they're going in front of a small group of children and telling jokes and stories and the like in order to entertain them, you don't really need to know the answer to that. They might not be able to fail at that if they're a talented bard, and it might not be important to the story, might not involve any kind of conflict, really, but your player's looking for a chance to show off their awesome performance skill that they've gone ahead and become an expert in, and they're doing so in a manner that's fun and involving in the story, so you can allow a role in that situation that doesn't really have consequence, so that they can showcase their talent. And it's important that players get those opportunities, so it's kind of and rolling the dice and seeing that really, really high score on it really does give a lot of joy to the player that has gone down that route. So even though it breaks us out of the narrative and into the mechanical for no good reason, it's still worth doing when it allows a player to highlight. It lets them look awesome, and frankly, if looking awesome is a goal for our players, then it should probably be a goal for you as well. Awesome people like and subscribe to my channel, so make sure that you're awesome. Finally, the fourth key that I brainstormed was about the creation of suspense. Sometimes rolling the dice creates tension in and of itself. There's that moment of tension between rolling and seeing the outcome that has a big impact into why we are excited to play Dungeons & Dragons. It's a principle that outlines and is greatly involved in why games of chance are so popular, worldwide and at all times. Even though they might seem simple, repetitive, boring from the outside, the tension between I need this certain number on my dice, rolling the dice and seeing the result is a big deal. So when you're looking to create tense moments, the dice are there to help you with that. It is something that should be employed sparingly to roll dice in a situation where you, again, don't meet the first key. Even if you need tension in that situation, there needs to be some kind of meaningful consequence that is at least implied in order for tension to truly be created. So sometimes that the most obvious example of that in my mind is the stealth check when there's perhaps nobody watching. A stealth check when nobody's watching is kind of one of those dice checks that you would think doesn't need to exist for the purpose of resolving uncertainty. It doesn't really help with any kind of conflict resolution. It might allow a player to demonstrate their cool skills by letting them see the massive number that they roll if you're not hiding stealth checks behind the screen, which I personally do. But what it does do, most assuredly, is increase the tension of the moment. So sometimes it can be worthwhile if the players and the characters don't know that there's nobody watching to call for those checks in order to increase the tension of those moments. One of the best utilizations of this also when it comes to tension is to extend the distance between calling for a check and resolving the check by using it as an appropriate cliffhanger for a shift to a different spotlight on somebody else in the group. I very often like to bounce to the next person in line when it comes to whatever action is going on by saying, perfect, roll me an Arcana check, and then move on to the next person. They roll, they get their dice roll, they know what their answer is, but they don't yet know what the result of that is, and that little tiny bit of tension helps to keep them engaged, waiting for their turn to come back around so they can find the answer and move forward. You can also do that obviously in far more tense situations, and the extended distance there sort of carries that tension around and helps to build momentum into the scene that's going on. I hope that those 4 keys are useful, Psycho, as well as to the rest of you who are watching this video. Thanks so much for joining me. If you're looking for dice advice, I have a couple of videos that might be worth checking out. They're probably going to be over here somewhere, so check those out, and thanks for watching. Happy adventuring.